Studies show that the average person checks their phone 96 times per day and can only focus for 8 minutes before getting distracted. If you're watching this video, you're probably one of them. You sit down to work at 9 a.m., blink, and suddenly it's 6 p.m. I was the same way. 8 hours of pretending to work that produced maybe 2 hours of actual results. Then I discovered this 25-minute technique that supposedly turns anyone into a productivity machine. The Pomodoro Technique. 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break, repeat. Millions swear by it. But here's what they don't tell you. I tested it for 30 days straight. What happened shocked me. My productivity didn't just improve, it increased by 340%. But the real secret wasn't the 25-minute rule. It was something completely unexpected that happened during the breaks. Here's everything. I interrupt your enjoyment to tell you that these animations takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to create, and I animate it and do everything myself. So if you're enjoying these videos, please leave a like and subscribe for more. It seriously would mean a lot to me. Now back to the video. We think we're just lazy or lack discipline, but science tells a different story. We're never actually focused. But here's where it gets interesting. I discovered that the most productive people aren't superhuman. They don't have better willpower or some secret genetic advantage. They just understand something the rest of us miss: the power of artificial constraints. Enter the Pomodoro Technique. Created by Francesco Cirillo in the late 1980s, named after those tomato-shaped kitchen timers, the concept seems almost insultingly simple. I was skeptical. 25 minutes? That's barely enough time to get started on anything meaningful. How could something so simple fix decades of distraction addiction? But desperation makes you try crazy things. I was drowning in my own inability to focus, so I decided to test it properly. Not just for a day or a week, I committed to 30 full days. I would track everything. Whether this technique was actually the productivity miracle millions claimed it was, or just another internet fad. But here's what I discovered in those 30 days that completely changed my perspective on focus, productivity, and why our brains are wired to fail in the modern world. It wasn't just about the 25-minute work sessions. The real magic happened during those 5-minute breaks, and what I learned about them will probably shock you. By the end, you'll understand why the Pomodoro Technique isn't really about time management at all. It's about something much deeper. Are you ready to see what 30 days of focused work can actually do? Let's start with day 1. Day 1 arrived like a challenge I wasn't prepared for. I downloaded a Pomodoro app, cleared my desk, and sat down at 9 a.m. with the confidence of someone who just discovered fire. 25 minutes of focused work? How hard could it be? I pressed start on the timer. The gentle ticking began. I opened my laptop, cracked my knuckles, and began typing. 3 minutes in, my phone buzzed. Just a quick glance, I told myself, Instagram notification. Someone had liked my photo from last weekend. Before I knew it, I was scrolling through stories, watching someone's breakfast, then somehow ending up on a video about productivity tips. The irony hit me like a brick wall. The timer was still running. 22 minutes left. I closed my phone, took a deep breath, and refocused. 7 minutes later, I needed water. The kitchen was just downstairs. Quick trip, I promised myself. But then I noticed the dishes, and the mail, and suddenly 15 minutes had evaporated. When I returned to my desk, the timer showed 4 minutes remaining. 4 minutes. I'd accomplished exactly nothing in 21 minutes. The shame was overwhelming. Day 2 was worse. I made it exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds before checking my phone. Not because it buzzed, not because I needed anything, but because my brain was screaming for stimulation. I realized I wasn't just dealing with poor focus. I was dealing with a full-blown addiction to distraction. The next attempt, I lasted 6 minutes, then 4, then 8. Each failure felt like proof that I was fundamentally broken. Other people could focus for hours. I couldn't manage 25 minutes. What was wrong with me? By day 3, I was ready to quit. The technique wasn't working. I was worse than when I started because now I had concrete evidence of my inadequacy. But something strange happened during my afternoon attempt. I was working on a report, the timer was ticking, and for some reason, I entered a flow state. Minutes passed without me noticing. The work was happening. Words were appearing on the screen. Problems were being solved. And then, ring! The 25-minute timer went off, and I was genuinely annoyed. I was in the zone, and this stupid timer was interrupting me. That's when I had my first revelation. The Pomodoro Technique wasn't about limiting my work to 25 minutes. It was about training my brain to focus for 25 minutes. And for the first time in months, I had done exactly that. The 5-minute break felt earned. I stood up, stretched, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: the satisfaction of focused work. It was like flexing a muscle I'd forgotten I had. Day 4 brought a new challenge. I completed my first full session, then my second. But by the third Pomodoro, I was mentally exhausted. My brain felt like it had run a marathon. I couldn't understand why 75 minutes of work felt more draining than 8 hours of scattered activity. The answer came to me during that evening's research. Focused attention is like a muscle. I've been living in a state of constant distraction for so long that my focus muscle had atrophied. Those 25-minute sessions weren't just work periods. They were intensive training sessions for my brain. This realization changed everything. I wasn't failing at productivity. I was literally rebuilding my capacity for deep work, one session at a time. Day 5 was the breakthrough. I completed 4 full Pomodoros in a row. That's 2 hours of uninterrupted focused work. 2 hours. I accomplished more in those 2 hours than I typically did in entire days. But the real magic happened during the breaks. Those 5-minute intervals weren't just rest periods. They were revolution moments. My brain started working differently. Ideas would pop up. Solutions to problems I'd been stuck on for weeks would suddenly become clear. It was like my subconscious had finally been given permission to process information without constant interruption. By day 6, I was addicted to something new. The timer became my ally instead of my enemy. When it rang, I felt accomplished. When the break ended, I was eager to start again. The technique was rewiring my relationship with work itself. Day 7 brought an unexpected challenge. I tried to do 8 Pomodoros in one day. Big mistake. By the 6th session, my brain was fried. I couldn't concentrate. I was making mistakes, and I felt physically drained. This was my introduction to an important lesson. More isn't always better. But even that failure taught me something crucial. I was learning to recognize my mental limits. In the past, I would have pushed through, producing low-quality work while feeling miserable. Now I understood that respecting my brain's capacity was the key to sustainable productivity. The week ended with a revelation that nobody talks about. The Pomodoro Technique isn't really about time management. It's about attention management. Every time you resist the urge to check your phone, every time you push through the discomfort of focused work, every time you honor a 5-minute break, you're training your brain to be less reactive and more intentional. I tracked everything that first week. 7 days of experimentation, 43 attempted Pomodoros, 19 complete sessions. That's a 44% success rate. In any other context, that would be considered failure. But in the context of rebuilding my attention span, it was a miracle. More importantly, those 19 complete sessions produced more quality work than I'd done in the previous month. Not because I was working more hours, but because every minute was intentional. Every session had a purpose. Every break was respected. As I prepared for week 2, I had no idea what was coming. I thought I'd figured out the technique. I thought the hard part was over. I was about to discover that week 1 was just the warm-up. Week 2 would bring challenges that would test everything I thought I knew about focus, productivity, and the limits of human attention.